Superman Lost issue 5 picks up 15 days after Clark's return to Earth, where Wonder Woman is joined by Lois for lunch, telling her that she wished to check in but didn't want to intrude. Lois thinks that she could use some intrusion right now, making it known that she doesn't really like Diana, thinking that it was really her bathing suit of a costume. But before Diana can tell her that nothing between her and Clark happened, she quickly tells Diana to ignore her, since she knows she's not being rational. She asks if Diana brought it, and the hero reveals the lasso of truth, asking how Clark is, and Lois thinks that he's still lost, as at the Daily Planet, Clark is pulled from his daze by Jimmy, telling the photographer that he's fine, but he calls Jimmy by the name of the alien boy he helped on Kansas. He takes a look at the art of the building collapse story they're working on, as Lois meanwhile tells Diana that Clark is having trouble adjusting back to life outside of total silence, since he can't screen the noise, something that it took him years to learn to do in the first place. She thinks that he went to work too soon, and even with the sick days they called in, didn't help, and now he's back to it all, asking who the people he's working with are and what did he used to do there. Lois knows that he was only gone for a few hours, but Clark can't remember his life or job. Diana hopes that the lasso will help, and Lois finds it funny she should mention hope, as decades before, during Clark's 8th year on Kansas, Clark gets up, finding Jimmy and the Lantern have no luck finding any signals from their deep space probes that might help get him back to Earth. The Lantern reminds her planet was destroyed by the Contractiado, pursuing them to this world, and she was alone until she found him, and their years there have made her think that this is her home, so maybe he needs to do the same as well. Clark thinks that she wants him to give up, but the woman says that he always told her that she was a Green Lantern, and what that meant, beginning the day they met. Years prior, Superman and the Lantern battle the Contractiado, blowing through their ships as Max demands they cease their assault. Superman says they will once they escort the alien ships from the world. Max doesn't think that Clark knows who the people are, and they choose to live in the pollution and disease, even having voted for it. Clark doesn't back down as Max calls up Victor, demanding that he make Superman stand down and honor their contract, a contract that was made at gunpoint. Victor reminds him that the Republic hasn't interfered, but Max thinks that Superman and the Lantern represent them. Victor is quick to explain that they are not citizens, and Superman is an illegal alien, and after all, it was Max and his people that brought Superman to Kansas, so really it's his fault. Max relents, but demands that they return their technology to the fleet, but Victor refuses, since they honored their end of the agreement, and now it's all Max's problem. Max desperately asks Superman to stop his attack, and if he does, they'll help him find Earth, but the hero knows that they will just try and attack Earth, just like they did with Kansas. Clark tells him that he found a Green Lantern now, so he no longer needs their help since Kansas is under the protection of the Green Lantern Corps now. The Contractiado make their escape into space as Superman tells the Lantern that he is very glad to see her, wanting to show her somewhere first before they leave. Superman speeds into the ground, burning his way into the underground Republic. Superman explains to the Lantern how the Republic are staunch libertarians, with voting being like a religion to them, bound by the law to respect the decisions of the electorate, even if those decisions are ill-informed, like cancelling their space program or ignoring climate change. Victor tells the arriving Clark that he is right and no citizen will starve, unless they vote for it of course, which makes Clark's nightly heroics helping the hungry annoying to him. Clark knows that he signed a contract with the Contractiado to attack their own planet, but Victor knows that they were actually attacking the Zealots above after they turned down their offer for mutual defense pacts. Clark tells the man that he is leaving and the Green Lantern will take over from him, but the Lantern asks who the hero is and what a Green Lantern is. Later on in deep space, the Lantern reveals that she doesn't know what a Green Lantern is, since the owner of the ring she has died before he could tell her anything, and the ring itself has been silent the entire time. She thinks that she is disconnected from the core network that Clark told her about, since the ring only retains a local map of space, and they have just reached the sector boundary. Clark asks his new Marquis device how far it is to Earth, learning that it's 27.3 light years. Clark knows that it took him 3 years to travel a fraction of the distance the Lantern covered in less than an hour, and even with his telescopic vision, he can't seem to find any familiar star systems or nebulas. He introduces himself to the woman, apologizing for not asking about her name. The woman says that her name is unpronounceable in his tongue, but the Marquis device was able to translate it into something familiar. allowing her to call herself Hope. Later, back on Kansas, Clark sends Jimmy to bed, telling him he can stare at the computer tomorrow, and his nasal filters might be reaching their capacity. Jimmy asks Clark why he wears glasses, knowing that he needs his nasal filters to breathe, but Clark doesn't seem to need the glasses to see. But Clark begs to differ, saying goodnight to Jimmy. As Clark heads to his room, he spies Hope taking a shower. She notices the hero, but Clark moves on to his own room, later awoken by Marquise to begin his nightly superheroics down in Newark. Later on, Jimmy races out of bed, remembering the gravitational lensing, and he had to adjust the wavelength to compensate, something he hasn't been doing. He taps away at his computer, inputting his new parameters, and soon gets a reading that could give him a way to get Clark home. Hope comes to see what the commotion is about, and Jimmy tells her about the temporal rift he found with his new settings, finding it only appears in cycles. Hope thinks that they can investigate as soon as Clark returns, suddenly smashing Jimmy's head into his computer. The bloodied boy pleads with the woman as she seals his head in an airless construct, suffocating him and apologizing to him since she has been lonely for so long and she cannot let him take Superman away from her. Back on Earth, Lois is woken by the apartment's fire alarm. She finds that Clark broke her laptop in frustration, telling him that she was using that laptop for her work, as she turns the alarm off. Clark knows that it's nothing, but Lois knows it was probably more star charts or data from the Justice League deep space probes which gave him no answers to where he was for the last 20 years. Clark again calls Lois Hope, and Lois tells him that she thought that was some prayer he had been muttering in his sleep, but then she realized it was a name. Clark again thinks back to his time on the planet, but Lois reminds him that he's home now and he is safe, and she wants to prove it. She wraps the lasso of truth around her and Clark, after a moment, removes his glasses and hugs his wife as he breaks down crying.